Hello, welcome back. I know it's been a while. I had a very busy Christmas and New Year's, but we're going to be going over the high poly now, and I'm going to be ignoring the large base at the bottom of the model for the time being, because I'm still not sure what material I'm going to make it out of. So we're going to be working on the metal base part, and if you look at the reference, I want to add in these sunken in bolts. So I'm going to be changing the design of the metal base, getting rid of the chamfer and making it more of a disc shape. Now I'm just insetting a couple of times just to get a ridge, and I'm just going to add another loop cut through there, bevel it, and then lower it down, just to give some separation between the edge of this thing and the center. And then we're going to add the bolts along the outer edge. I'm recording this all in real time, by the way, just because I want to go over things that come up and sort of try and give you more information about the whole process, other ways of doing things, and just things that come up while you're modeling that you can easily forget to mention them. So to make the bolts, I'm just going to make them a 6-sided cylinder. Just positioning this roughly around the edge. In regards to the reference, you'll see that it's not going to be the exact same as the reference ones. Thing with using reference is to take the idea and then just sort of make it your own. So it won't be a like-for-like copy. Here I'm just adding loop cuts to make it easier to snap into place. And then I'm just going to lower that down into the frame. Adjust the scale so it looks a bit better. Nothing fancy, just scaling it in place. Just using Shift G to select that whole planar of faces, just to get the overall size of the thing correct. And I'm just going to make a duplicate now, and I'm going to use the duplicate to make the cutter object to cut into the frame. Using Nail Tools Edge Curve Plus, I'm just going to increase the amount of sides. It's still a cylinder at the end of the day, so you can easily add extra edges. And I'm just going to scale that, excluding the Z-axis, so it's just slightly larger than the hexagonal bolt. Snap the origin point to the bottom face and line it up. Just snapping these down so they're flush with the frame. If you're not sure how to do this, I've got a video in my quick tips guide on snapping. It's not massively obvious in Blender how to snap easily, but once you get the hang of it, it's a lot easier, and it makes your workflow a lot quicker. So I've just run a difference boolean with the brush settings from Ball Tool. It just keeps the cutter active so that I can adjust it if needed. Changing the transform pivot to the 3D cursor. And then we can rotate duplicates of the cutter all around in a circular pattern, just using Shift R to duplicate the last action. Just going to select them all and join them all together. If it doesn't let you, it's because there's not one that's currently active, so you just select one. And as you can see, it's just cut all the holes all the way through the frame. I'm just doing the same thing with the bolt itself. Actually, if I undo that and we use Alt D instead of Shift D, it will make linked duplicates. So when we edit one, it will edit all of them. So if we just change that back to bounding box, as you can see, if we adjust one, it'll adjust all of them. We're not going to do that though. We're going to just do a chamfer. Actually, no, let's not do a chamfer. Let's see, what can we do? One thing we haven't done is if we add, we need to select the cutter object and just shade auto smooth. And that will just smooth out the middle of those holes that the bolts are sitting in. Okay, I'm just going to insert the top of these bolts and just extrude it in. And as you can see, it does the same thing to all of them. Okay, moving on, we're going to insert the, we're going to duplicate the middle section. Just delete the boolean. And just scale that into place. We're going to use this to create the center island for the bracket. So I'm just going to place that slightly below the other one and then extrude it above. This will be so that when we use the bevel shader later on, it will catch the bevel between those two objects. We will be using the bevel shader for taking care of all of the edges that we need to catch highlights. I find it a much better workflow than Sub D, although Sub D does have its uses on more organic shapes. For 99% of the rest of the time, I think the bevel shader's the better technique. So if we look at the reference quickly, you'll see there's one of the images in the top left that I had. I really liked this design for this base that it's sitting on. So I'm just going to try and recreate that. It's a little bit of a hard shape to make sense of when you're looking at someone else's design, especially if they've got organic shapes involved. But we'll do our best and see what we end up with. Just grabbing this face, and we're just going to snap this to the same height as that part. And then use it to cut away a section at the front. The important thing to bear in mind while doing all this is no design decision is completely final. Just keep everything quite fluid. If you want to go back and change something or completely redo an entire part, you're more than welcome to. It's always a very loose plan when you're doing your own personal projects. So with this, I'm now going to add a loop cut through the middle and bevel it to get them evenly spaced on either side. And then I'm going to select both of those loop cuts and bevel those to get even width on both of these. And I'm going to use these to extrude out a region where it will look like the top part is bolted to the bottom part. Even though they're one part altogether, I just really like the look of it from the reference. Yeah, so selecting these, I might inset them. Actually, no, I don't need to inset them. So if I just select the faces on this side, I should be able to just extrude them back because this is a cutter object. So if I remove part of the cutter, it will bring back the original geometry. Like so. And then if I select these edges on both sides and run a bevel on them, press C to clamp overlap and just give them 6 sides. That will round out these shapes nicely. I'm just going to undo that for the moment. When you do bevel something into a point, like we did with these parts, always merge all your verts afterwards, because you will have two that are sitting on occupying the same space. Just going to move this back a bit. I think it needs more space. And we are going to mirror this over to the other side once we're done. So that boolion's been applied. Just merge all the verts now. We don't need to worry too much about cleaning up at this stage. The high poly, you can, to an extent, forget about topology, although not if it's making your life harder while you're actually working. So if it's something you need good topology on for adding loop cuts, then by all means clean it up. But we mainly do that at the end, right before working on the low poly. Just shade auto smooth on this piece, check all the shading's looking good. I really like this double layered effect. and with the bevel shader later on, all these edges will catch highlights quite nicely. I'm just going to mirror this over on the y-axis and just apply the mirror. Hopefully you can tell I've got a new microphone, so there should be a lot less popping of air sounds while I'm recording this. Hopefully all my videos going forward will sound a lot better in quality, because they were a bit of a shambles before. Again, this topology that I'm fixing up here is more for the purposes of trying to sort of future-proof any need to extrude out of this base to make the bracket that the gun will rest in. I've not yet thought about how that's going to connect, or if I'm going to just make it as a separate object. It will most likely be the same object when I come to low poly it, because most of this model is going to be the same material. The main exception to that will be like the hexagonal bolts will be a different material, or especially a different colour, just to make them stand out. So you can add a chamfer around this top rim. Although, before I do that, if I just fix up these, make them straight. Straighten these. Just so we've got clean rectangles in the middle. Not quite sure about that. Actually, no. I'm gonna remove the chamfer. So I'm just going to use select mirror and extend just to select the other side, and just remove that inner part. It does mean I've got to move these back again and straighten them up. And if I just mirror that across in all directions, not vertically, obviously. I think what would be good for these parts that stick out is if they sloped down. Now the only issue with that, because they're rounded, is you can't just rotate them downwards. You need to basically use a boolean to just cut through them. So I'm going to add in a cube and snap it to that vert, scale it down, and just position it in the right place. Just make it exactly sitting on that top edge. Scale it on the y-axis, and now if I rotate it on the x-axis, it will pivot from that point, and I can use that to cut away that part of those bolt holders, or whatever you want to call them. So I'm just going to use a difference boolean on those. Doesn't look like there's any errors there. So apply it all, merge by distance, just to clean up any issues. Join these verts. And again, I can just mirror everything. I don't often leave my mirrors active, just personal preference. I just like to take them off just so that I can work on one area without worrying about what it's doing. Now I'm going to add in that chamfer again, so I'm going to use the selection tool, selection mirror, to just get the Y and X sides. Just check everything's selected, and then I can reintroduce that chamfer, and it'll be even all the way around. Straighten up this edge again, and again just mirror everything. Okay, and just merge verts again, just in case anything's got duplicated anywhere. So just checking the amount of sides I used on those earlier holes cut for the hexagonal bolts, and I'm just going to use a similar amount of sides for these. So just snapping into place a cylinder and then scaling it into position. I'm probably not going to bother adding a bolt in these holes, purely for the fact that I think it's too small a detail to actually see. Shade auto smooth before using Boolean. I'm just going to add some extra edges through there with Edge Curve Plus again, just because it doesn't look particularly rounded. And for the high poly, it really needs to have that. Like I say, there's no point skimping on geometry when you're doing the high poly. For the low poly, that's a different matter. We'll optimize everything later on. So again, just run a difference Boolean and apply it, delete the cutter, and just merge verts just to clear up any duplicates that are overlapping. No shading issues. I think so. It's how it should. Again, just going to mirror that over, just so it's the same detail everywhere. While I was looking at the reference, I liked. I think I got this idea for doing these handles sort of sunken into the frame as well, and I just want to use a few of them. Probably going to have 3. I like the idea of them being sort of flattened down, like you have to pull them up to release something. So I'm just going to work on that with another Boolean. So just going to get a box and position it into place. You can start with using a difference Boolean straight away and then worry about where it actually goes by moving it about afterwards. So here I'm just scaling it on the x-axis till I get it roughly the size I want. I don't want it too close to the edges. I do want it to look kind of longer than it is wide. So I'm not sure how deep we need it to go. If we put it down about there, should be okay. Just moving the top down just to make it easier to adjust. Just going to chamfer one end of it. And then on these corners, I'm just going to run a bevel. Actually, it's just apply the scale just to make absolutely sure there's no strange scaling. I don't think I scaled it in object mode, but it never hurts to double check and apply your scale. If you ever get weird things happening when you're trying to bevel or chamfer anything, that'll be why. Just going to adjust the width of this. So if I did loop cut down the middle. And then I'm just going to mirror that across to the other side. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Just going to bring this forward a little bit. Just so there's a bit more space between that and the edge. I do apologise that obviously because I've not sped this up, there is a lot of me just rotating around the model, seeing what it looks like from different angles. Normally I double speed it just so it cuts out some of that. So I'm just going to, again, use the 3D cursor to rotate this object around 2 times with Shift R, and an angle of 120 degrees gives you 3 equally spaced. It's all part of the same cutter, so it all just cuts away from the frame as you'd want it to. Next, just apply the boolean, and we're just going to make the handle now. That's going to sit within that hole. So I'm just going to duplicate a piece of geometry from there, separate it, and then snap it to. Snap it to the top of there. Extrude it to the top of there, so it perfectly fills that hole. It won't be obvious when this becomes a normal map detail, but I'm going to bring the bottom part of it up. So just going to select those bottom faces. If I select the right ones. Yep, select those and move them up on the Z-axis. It's just sort of a bit of fine-tuning at this stage. I want to get a bit of a gap around the edge of the handle as well. Sometimes you can scale it in place, sometimes you're better off just manually moving the edges. So I'm just going to scale it a little bit. Although the bevel shader will pick up where it's a separate object, it just gives it a little bit extra help to separate it from the rest of the body. Just going to bevel these edges. Can't remember, put clamp overlap on. Merge that. It just gets rid of the 3 along the middle. and at the other end is where I want it to actually hinge from. So what I'm going to do is, if I join the verts on either side, then I'll be able to curve the end part of it down. So I'll just bridge these verts, and then if I go into side view and just lower these down slightly more for each one, it will get a nice curve, a nice gradual curve going down. Might need to bridge those second from last verts as well, just to prevent any strange shading issues. Just out of isolation mode. Yeah, and that's catching the light exactly how I want it to. Just going to move these in slightly more on the x-axis. Again, just to give a bit more space around it. And we'll just mirror that across so it's equal on the other side. Okay, that's pretty much it. We just need to duplicate those around to the holes. That's just Shift D, RZ 120 from the 3D cursor, and then Shift R to do the second one. Okay, there's one, and there's the other. And I'll see you in the next part, where we'll be working on the main bracket that holds the rest of the gun. Thank you for watching. Take care.